Hello, everyone. Welcome. On behalf of the Tennessee Department of Revenue and our Commissioner, David Geragano, I just want to thank you all for being with us here for our June 2025 free monthly tax webinar. My name is Katie Julian, and I work for our Taxpayer Services Division in the Education Unit. I'm joined today by Megan Schote. She is our subject matter expert, who is a supervisor over in our F&E Registration Unit. Definitely a great expert to have on today's webinar, talking about closing businesses, because when it comes to closing an F&E account, things are a little bit more complex. So we're very grateful to have Megan with us today. Also joined by Dan Vinson. He is the Assistant Director of our Taxpayer Services Division. Happy to have him here. And just before we get started, I want to go over a few things you see on the screen in front of you here. If you have any audio issues throughout the webinar, we have found the best thing to do is to leave and come back in. We've got a link here to WebEx support, but really most people get it cured by leaving and coming back in. We will have a recording of today's presentation in our webinar video library. It'll be posted either later today or tomorrow. When you leave the event, if you do need CPE credit, as you exit the event, there is a survey and there's a question on the survey asking if you need CPE credit. So just answer yes there and provide the name as you want it on your certificate. Also, we hope to have some time here at the end of the webinar for some questions. It's a pretty complex topic with lots to go over, but if we don't get to your question, or if you have kind of a specific account related question, we'll provide this again towards the end. But our contact information here is revenue.support@tn.gov, and our general tax line for all questions is 615-253-0600. And I put a link to this presentation, the PDF of the presentation, over in the chat, but here is a QR code to scan if you want to view a PDF of this presentation. Here on WebEx, the links, this link that you see here to the webinar video library, the link to our email, those links aren't live on your webinar screen, but they are live links over in the PDF. So we provide lots of links, but just so you know, you'll have to access those via the PDF. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started here. All right, so as I said, this month, June 2025, we are going over how to close a business. Now, we are going to be just talking about the tax account aspect of this. We'll touch on a little bit of other aspects like closing with the Secretary of State, the ABC, stuff like that, but really we're focusing in on closing your tax accounts. This is a very important topic that everybody who is in business needs to understand at some point in time. When it comes time to close, there is a proper way to do it. Not closing properly or not notifying the Department of Revenue about your closure, about ownership changes, which sometimes changes require a closure of an account and then a reopening of another account. Failing to do so can result in delinquencies, which unfortunately result in penalty and interest. Nobody wants to see that happen, and especially not due to just misunderstanding the situation. The number of people who go into business and don't close down properly and end up in this situation where they end up in collections, it's really unfortunate. So that's why we're doing this today. It's a real important topic that we want you all to understand. We're going to be going over tax account changes, what changes require a closure of the account, which ones can just be an edit to the account. And then definitely closing accounts, whether it be due to the business closing or a change that's requiring the closing. We're going to be going over closing really the big main accounts that are that most people have: business tax account, sales tax account. Liquor by the drink, that one just is a little bit different. It requires some extra steps, and certainly franchise and excise tax account. That's going to include filing final returns, requesting closure and termination, any next steps that happened after that. So after we go through these slides, we hope to, like I said, have time to chat a little bit. We'll open up the chat at that point. It's closed down right now, so when we get to that section of the webinar today where we can take some questions to this panel, we'll open up the chat at that point. sharing with you here a few resources. Again, if you have the PDF that we've linked over to, these are live links. We're not going to be going into background information today about what is business tax, what is sales tax, all that good stuff. But you can find information about that. All of our tax manuals are linked to right here. We have tax manuals that are specific to each tax type, as well as some industry specific guidance. Great tax manuals. We do have an info page on our website that gives guidance about closing a business. We also have, we've done a previous webinar in the past about updating your tax accounts. We're going to touch on some of that here, like how to update certain things in TINTAP or by reaching out to us, but we also have a whole webinar dedicated to that. And these are just the webinars about the basics of these tax types that we're going to be specifically talking about today: business tax, sales tax, F&E, and liquor by the drink. All right, this first slide we have now, change or close, this chart. Each one of these items, we're going to go into further detail later in this webinar. So, but this is just kind of everything on one page. If a certain action requires you just to make a change to your account or to close it. You can see the first item on here is adding or removing partners. Now that's going to be for legal entities, not for sole proprietors, but that's considered a change. And the action item there is to request documentation, to make the request and then to send documentation to the Tennessee Department of Revenue. Again, you see at the bottom of the screen here our contact information. You can call us. You can email that documentation to revenue.support@tn.gov. Again, here in just a few slides, we're going to go over what type of documentation, a little bit more about adding and removing partners. Business name changes, that is considered a change. Again, you can make that request to us and send any required documentation directly to the Tennessee Department of Revenue. More details about that here in a little while. So changing business locations, does that require a change or a closure? It depends. If you're moving within the same jurisdiction, that means obviously within the same county, but then within the same municipality within a county, then you can just do that on TINTAP. You can move your business, change the address to it on TINTAP. If you're changing jurisdiction at all, you're going to close a location and then register another location at the new address. That's if you're moving jurisdictions. Changing corporate structure that requires a new charter through the Secretary of State or a new certificate of authority, that is going to require a tax account closure and then registering another tax account. So that's not necessarily that the whole business is closing, you're retiring, it's closing. It's just a change to the corporate structure that's going to require closure of the account. We're going to go through that process here in a little while later on today. Transferring or changing ownership of the business does require closure. And again, that's just to close the account and register. The new owners who you're transferring business to would register their own tax accounts. Same with selling or closing a business, requires closure. There is something called successor liability. We are going to go into that in a little while. Okay, before we get too much further here too, I just want to, this is kind of some Tennessee tax account lingo terms to make sure we're all on the same page. It's kind of important to understand these because we're closing at certain, when it comes to closure, we're making reference to some of these terms where it's important for you to understand. So overall, you've got the entity. That is the taxpayer, the legal name of the entity. An entity ID is going to be either a federal employee identification number or a social security number. A sole proprietor or marital joint account, those are registered under an entity's social security number, and the legal name is going to be the legal name of the person who it's associated with, of the sole proprietor. Of course, there can be a DBA, doing business as, the business name, but the legal name of the entity for a sole proprietor is that person's name, and the entity ID is the social. For all other accounts, corporations, LLCs, so on and so forth, the EIN is the entity ID. Within the entity, we're going to have several different accounts usually. Um, Various tax accounts can include business tax. Those account numbers are going to end in -BUS. F&E accounts are going to end in -FAE. Sales tax accounts are going to end in -SLC, liquor by the drink. Those account numbers are going to end in -LBD. So under an entity, you've got usually various tax accounts. Some tax accounts are location based. Most are actually not F&E, but location based, it's going to be based on a situs associated with the jurisdiction where the taxes are going to be allocated. Situs is basically a place for legal taxation where the property belongs. It's based on GIS, which is Geographic Information System. So for those type tax accounts like business tax, sales tax, liquor by the drink, those are all location based. Even if you don't have what they call a brick and mortar location and it's based out of your home, that still needs to be the location that is registered with us, because that's where a certain amount of the tax revenue that is brought in gets allocated to where the business is located, to the city and county, okay? An account can have multiple locations or DBAs. And for most locations, uh, the location ID number is going to be the business license number. That's not always the case, but there is a specific location ID number for the locations. So just to give a little lesson there on the different levels within a tax account, within an entity's account, I should say. All right, so the first thing we're going to touch on here is adding or removing a stakeholder. A few slides ago on the chart, I said this requires just a change, right? In order to make that change, you're going to submit a request to the Tennessee Department of Revenue. And here you see a list of the types of documentation that is required. And this, our subject matter expert today, Megan, this is something she probably does on a daily basis, is make these kind of changes to taxpayers' registration to their F&E account. For corporations, these are not these items listed here that are items of documentation that you would supply. We don't need all of these. These are just or. I should have said or in between each of these bullet items. But for corporation, we can use for documentation a copy of the state charter, any articles of amendments to the charter with a list of stockholders and any amendments, copy of court orders or legal documents regarding changes here. And you can see an example of what those court order, trust documents, buy-sell agreements, merger documents. For partnerships and LLCs, adding or removing a stakeholder will require documentation such as copy of the operating agreement, copy of any amendments to the operating agreement, or again, any court orders or legal documents regarding ownership change. Again, these can be submitted to revenue.support@tn.gov, or here you see a link over to submitting a help ticket. Whichever way you go about those get routed to the same place over at Megan's team, actually. So likewise, business legal name changes, same kind of thing. We're going to need some documentation here. Reasons for a name change: a sole proprietor or may have a change in their marital status, or just a name change. A business name change is kind of different for a sole proprietor. If the DBA, doing business as, that's a simple fix on TINTAP. But a legal name change, a couple slides ago, I mentioned how a sole proprietorship, the legal entity name for a sole proprietor is that person's name. So if I had a sole proprietorship, the legal name in the state's tax system is going to be Katie Julian. If I changed my name to something else, I would need to submit that request to the Tennessee Department of Revenue and just supply documentation such as Social Security card, a marriage license, divorce decree, that type of thing, stating, proving that there is a legal name change for that sole proprietorship or marital joint account. For all other entities, for legal entities, corporations, LLCs, you're going to submit that request to us and supply documentation supporting the legal name. The legal name, this is very important here, the second bullet under legal entities, the legal name of a business must exactly match the legal name that is on file with the Secretary of State. So whether you filed an article of amendment with the Secretary of State, so on and so forth. It has, what we have in our system has to match exactly. Again, all of that documentation can be sent to us, revenue.support@tn.gov, or by submitting a help ticket and attaching any required documentation. Okay, moving locations. This is where it depends whether you need to close an account, close a location and open another one, or just make the change on TINTAP. Like I said earlier, if the new location is in a different jurisdiction, sometimes that can be just right across the street. If the line for one town is on one side of the street and for another is on the other side and you're just moving across the street, if you change jurisdictions, even if you're within the same county, if you change municipalities, you're going to have to close the current location. You can do that in TINTAP. We're going to go over how to do that, and then open a new one. If that is the case, you will need to obtain a business license, whether that be a minimal activity license for gross receipts under 100,000 annually, or a standard business license. You'll need to get a new license from the jurisdiction you're moving into if you're moving into a new jurisdiction. Now, if you are moving and nothing is changing with your jurisdiction, staying in the same county and staying within the same municipality, if you are within a municipality, so if none of that changes, it's a fix that you can do yourself, changing that location address on TINTAP, and we're going to go over that on the next slide. So moving, staying in the same jurisdiction. What you're seeing here is a snip of a TINTAP account. If you want to zoom in on your screen, you can hit the little plus sign over the slide. I don't think if I zoom in, it doesn't zoom you in. So you have to zoom in yourself if you want to get a better look here. But we're assuming you've already logged into your TINTAP account here, okay? And at this point, you have clicked on More and then Addresses, okay? Once you are at that point, you will see this. This is what it's going to look like, and you're going to click on Locations. And then under the location, you are going to click on the blue address. That is a link. That's kind of a hyperlink. So that's where you would click on that and change the address to the address you're moving to. Likewise, that's where you can also change your DBA and you can change your mailing address, just FYI. Simple process there. If you're closing one or all locations, so uh, as I mentioned, a location is a specific profile within the account that is associated with a GIS address that's within a Tennessee jurisdiction, such as liquor by the drink, sales tax, business tax, motor oil, tire fee, auto rental surcharge. Those are all taxes that are location based. Locations can all be closed in TINTAP. You have to be very careful, though, the date you choose, because a tax return for the period in which your closure date exists must be filed. Now, I'll explain that a little bit more. I think the next slide shows you where you do that. Okay, so this is how you're going to do it. Once you are in TINTAP, the example that I have right here for closing a location, this happens to be a business tax, the tax account that we're within. You see it says business tax, but if you were to click on the tax account within TINTAP for any location-based tax, so business tax, sales tax, liquor by the drink, tire fee, it's going to be the same. You're going to click on additional actions and then close account. All right. The very first thing you're going to see when you go to close the account, it's going to ask you, do you want to close all locations, yes or no. If you choose yes, that's pretty simple. If you choose no, you don't want to choose close all locations, the next screen and the next slide that we're going to see shows you how you can choose which locations or single location you want to close. But that has to be answered. It's required that you answer if you want to close all or not. The next thing where it says date closed, as I just mentioned, that is very important. Let's say my business closed back in December of 2024, but I'm just now today getting around to closing it and letting the Department of Revenue know. If I were to choose today's date as my closure date, uh, June 24th of 2025, the state system, our system is going to be looking for, they're going to assume that you did business in 2025, and we're going to be looking for a tax return for 2025, for the 2025 tax year, right? So it's very important that you choose the correct date here. I would want to go in, if I did close my business back in 2024 or during the 2024 period at any point, I want to make sure I click on this little calendar here, and then you can choose a date. I would want to choose a date at least within the 2024 period, so that I don't have to file a return for 2025 because I wasn't open in 2025, right? You are required to type in a reason. That closure reason could be just going out of business. It could be moved locations now in a new jurisdiction, sold business, so on and so forth. All right, this is one where you definitely may want to zoom in. This is what it looks like if you have chosen to close not just one, not all of your locations, okay? You're going to have to choose which locations you want to close. If you've ever closed a business in TINTAP before, you'll notice that this is kind of new. This is a newer addition to TINTAP where all of your location-based tax accounts are going to be listed here. This particular example here has a liquor by the drink, a sales tax, a business tax. You can see those check boxes, but you see also listed here is motor oil, tire fee, auto rental surcharge. The reason why I am using this one as an example, because it shows you here where if there is an open liquor by the drink account, you cannot close down the location. You're not even given the option, and that's in the information at the top. The checkbox under open LBD means you have an open liquor license. To close the license, you must first contact the Alcoholic Beverage Commission. We're going to go into that here in a little while when we talk about closing down an F&E. But if you'll notice here, the only tax account location that this particular example is even able to close is this one right here, because they don't have an open LBD. But if you don't have liquor by the drink, that's not going to be an issue. You would just check the box out beside the location that you want to close and click the next button. There are a couple more steps that we're not going to, just basically confirming. You have to put your TINTAP password in just to confirm the closure, and then submit it, and that closes down a location. Again, you're not quite done. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but if you've closed a location, that means you're going to have to file a return for the period within which your closure takes place. All right, we're going to talk about that next. Filing a final return. So for any location that is closed, again, a return must be filed for the tax period that falls within the closure date. This technically, according to state law, says it must be done within 15 days. If the return is not available in TINTAP, you have to contact us to request that that return be generated. So typically, I'll give you an example of that. If you're closing down right now, June 24th, 2025. You close that down. At this point in time, our system does not automatically generate a return for business tax specifically right here today. It wouldn't generate that. It's not going to generate a return till usually the end of your fiscal year. So you would need to reach out to us. If for a sales tax account, if you closed it down right now, that return would be generated here in a couple days on the 1st of next month. So you'd be able to wait for then. If you wanted to file it today, though, you would have to contact us to request that we generate that return as well. So if the return is not available in TINTAP, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to file it. That just means it may not be generated yet. You do have to contact us. For F&E accounts, marking a return as final is required. And you do that, you say there's a question where you answer yes for termination withdrawal. If you want to zoom in here to see what that looks like, that's a required question on your F&E return. If you have if you answered no to that but need to go back and amend it to say that it was a final return, you can do so. And I think, Megan, you wanted to, you had some information about that you wanted to give us, right?
Yeah, so we get a lot of questions like regarding an additional payment. So when you go in and amend the return, if all you're doing is amending the return to mark it as final, you're not changing any numbers, anything like that, and you have already made a payment for that original return, at the end, it's going to ask you again if you would like to pay by ACH. You would just choose no and submit it. It is not necessary to submit an additional payment. It does not cost to amend a return.
I can see how that could be kind of confusing if you have
Yes,
already made payment for it. Like, wait, why is it asking me to pay again? But so you're going to
yes,
have to, that taxpayer's going to have to know that they already made payment for it. And if they have a question about that, they can go in and check on TINTAP if they had made the payment, or let us know. Because sometimes I know
absolutely.
if you've got multiple CPAs working on an account or whatever, or you're going in to amend it and maybe you had your accountant, you're not sure if your accountant already paid for it, whatever, like you can check on that, but it's going to ask you, do you want to make a payment regardless if you have or haven't?
Yes,
So, Megan, what
absolutely.
about if what if amending the return did increase the tax liability? If they're not just amending it to mark it as final, let's say, they're also amending it to mark it final, but they had to make a few changes to the return that changed the amount of tax liability. How does that work?
So then they would need to submit additional payments. Now, if you're not sure the difference, um, you can submit the payment and I would allow about 24 hours just overnight processing. You can give us a call to get the new balance, or your 10 tap should update overnight and it's going to give you that true balance um, that you need to pay additionally.
Okay. So in other words, you've changed some of your you've inputted some different numbers and marked it as final. You're not quite sure. Maybe it's after the due date, so there may be a little penalty and interest, or if you're just not quite sure, submit it without payment. Say,
Right.
no, I don't want to make a payment, push submit, and then wait till the next day. And then go
Yes.
in, log in, and see true balance, what you said. If this happens, if it's over the weekend, maybe check on a Monday,
Yeah,
right?
I would. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
for true balance.
Yes.
And if you're wanting to not wait for the next day, you can reach out to our call center, call us,
Mhm.
or send us a help ticket, and we can help maybe calculate that. So
Yes.
gets a little more complicated at that point when especially if it's you owe a little more and if there's some penalty and interest and stuff. So
Yeah.
yes, thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, on the subject of F&E tax account closure. So we're starting with the most complicated one, right? Um, some steps here though. It's really not that complicated. Filing, you must file a final return or final exemption renewal form. Um, that's the first step. A lot of people don't realize if they have an F&E exemption, like a fonts exemption, uh, something like that, they don't realize that they actually have to file a final one. Our system's going to keep thinking that you have an account unless you let us know, right? So you've got to file that final return or exemption renewal. Step one. Step two, all returns and payments must be filed on each account on the entity. What that means is that not just the F&E account, obviously filing that final return, making your payment, making sure there's a zero balance, but also in order to close out an F&E account, you also have to have final returns and zero balance and closure on your business tax account, your sales tax account, so on. So every account under that entity must be all returns and payments filed in order to close down the F&E. Uh, you see number 3 here, when all filing and payment requirements have been met, we will issue a tax clearance certificate for termination or withdrawal. This certificate, we will mail it to the address that's listed as your mailing address, but it is also available on TINTAP. You can reach out to us and request that. There's also a way to request that on TINTAP. We get into that later. But there's one more very important step here with closing out an F&E account, and that is to complete the remainder of the process. You have to give the Secretary of State that certificate that you receive from us within 45 days. All right. I asked one of my a friend in audit who knows a lot about F&E, what he sees happen a lot with F&E accounts not getting closed down properly, and he said really it's just not closing down with the Secretary of State after you close out with us, or closing out with the Secretary of State and thinking you're done there and not with us, and the dates have to line up as well. So um, let's see. Make sure I don't have any notes here that I didn't say. Okay. Yep. All right. Liquor by the drink tax closure. Again, we've got just some steps here. This one's a little bit more complex as well. As I mentioned a few slides ago, when you saw the location closure screen, a liquor by the drink location has to be closed before any associated tax account profiles can be closed. So if your business has a liquor by the drink account, get that process started because nothing else can be closed. No other locations can be closed until that one is closed out. So first step here, file a last return and pay any outstanding amount due within 15 days after the selling or quitting the business. Surrender your alcoholic beverage license to the TABC. Determine what you will do with your remaining liquor. There's a few things you can do here. You can sell it back to wholesalers. If keeping it, you'll need to file for and pay use tax on any of the liquor that you keep, or you can destroy it. If you choose this option, you have to reach out to the Tennessee Department of Revenue, who must be present. If you do for the destruction of the liquor, you'll owe no tax on liquor that is properly destroyed. You do have to reach out to us, to the Tennessee Department of Revenue at audit.communications@tn.gov to do an ending inventory. And then after all of those are met, you can obtain tax clearance from the Tennessee Department of Revenue. So a few very important steps there. If you have a liquor by the drink license, you already know how regulated that industry is. So just a few extra steps for closing out liquor by the drink. For business tax, if you have a standard business license, that does require you filing and paying business tax within 15 days after the business ceases operations or is sold. Again, as I mentioned, if after you've gone in to close the location, if there is not a return for during the period that the business closed, you will have to contact us to request that we generate a return. And this one right here, the second bullet, this is important. We do communicate with the county and county clerks and city recorders offices about a lot of things. You know, when you get a license, our system knows it. Well, it is still very important that if you close your business tax account with us, to contact your county or city office regarding closure. Important step not to skip there. If you have a minimal activity license, it's still a good idea to contact us regarding your business closing because we do share information with the city and county offices. We do have record that you have a minimal activity license. It helps make things cleaner, I guess you could say, if you let us know that you're closing, but there is no filing requirement for closing out a minimal activity license. Again, though, very important to let your city county clerk office know that you're closing if you hold a minimal activity license, but no filing, no tax filing there. All right, sales tax account closure. Again, this is sounding pretty familiar at this point. You have to file a final sales tax return and pay tax due within 15 days after the date the business was sold or closed. Important here, you must notify suppliers in writing that a resale certificate is no longer valid. So anywhere that any suppliers, wholesalers that you use that would have your resale certificate on file, send notification to them that you're closing. If you sell your business to a purchaser, the purchaser is going to have to apply for their own everything, including certificate of registration in their name, and get their own resale certificate. That does not carry on to a buyer of a business. They've got to set everything up. Any taxpayer allowing a new business owner to purchase property or services tax exempt using that taxpayer's registration is going to be guilty of misdemeanor, not only misdemeanor, but also could be held liable for tax due on those items or services. All right, so we talked earlier about getting a letter of tax clearance or letter of good standing. If you have an F&E account, you do, again, have to file all returns, make all payments, and then you can get that on, we'll send it to you, as I mentioned, we'll send it to you to the mailing address on file, or you can look it up through your TINTAP account. If a business does not have F&E, they must file all returns and then contact us to get that letter of good standing. What you see here is a clip of a snip of over on TINTAP without, let's see, within your TINTAP account, you can click on exemption registration and then obtain franchise excise tax clearance. You can get to that right there, and that's for F&E tax clearance. You have to contact us for other tax accounts for clearance or letters of good standing. Now, this is something that is interesting to me. A lot of people aren't aware. Under state law, the purchaser of a business can be liable for unpaid taxes, penalties, and interest charges of the previous owner or operator. That is Tennessee state law. The successor must withhold enough purchase money to cover taxes, interest, and penalties due and unpaid until the person selling that business can produce either a receipt or a certificate from the Tennessee Department of Revenue stating that no taxes are due, or there's an affidavit. They can sign an affidavit under oath that no tax, penalty, or interest is due. There's a link here if you've got the PDF of this presentation to a sample tax affidavit, and that would need to be submitted to the Tennessee Department of Revenue for verification. So again, when you're selling a business, if you're the buyer of a business, you need to make sure to either get that certificate saying no taxes are due or get that affidavit from the buyer, send it to us to verify. If you are selling your business, supply this to your buyer. There is more information about this kind of complex topic. There's an article on our website about how tax debt follows a business when purchased, and also an article about how to avoid owing taxes as a successor prior to purchasing a business. So very important there. If you've got questions about the process, there is a specific number, 615-741-7074, or you can email special.procedures@tn.gov. Just the key word here is you need a letter of tax clearance or good standing, or again, that affidavit when when you're buying a business. Just recently, you can check it out on our website right now, all of the court cases that we've had recently about this successor liability, and it happens more often than anybody would like to see where this is an issue. All right, we're at the end of our slides now. I'm going to go in and open up the chat for you to ask questions. You can ask questions to our panel. All right, and Megan, Dan, if y'all want to pop in here, we can Whoa, we got one big question already here. I wanted to go ahead and while people are putting their questions into the chat, Megan, if you could let us know what are the big things that you see as we've just gone over F&E, closing F&E is a little more because of the involvement of Secretary of State and everything. It's a little more complex than other tax accounts. Tell me what you see as being the major issues or hiccups. What are the things you see that people miss that you'd like to talk to us about?
So, a lot, there are a few things that we see when it comes to closing accounts. So, the commence date of your franchise and excise account has to match the registration date with the Secretary of State. Um, if you registered with the Secretary of State December 30th, 2024, and you come and register with us January 1st, 2025, we have to update that commence date to match the Secretary of State, and you are liable for filing a 2024 franchise and excise. So we do see that happen a lot. Just make sure, your registration date coincides with the Secretary of State. That way, you know that all returns are filed when you get ready to close, and we're
So if
not
we've
having to
got it
go over
wrong,
that.
if we've got the wrong date in our system, reach out to us about fixing that. And if Secretary
Yes,
of State, if you kind of if that one's wrong, reach out to them about changing it
yes,
there. They just have to line up
they
no
have
matter
to
what.
line up.
Okay.
Even if you did not start operating, you're still liable for the $0 return and paying that minimum $100 filing fee. A lot of times we deal with like, the final return was not marked. So you have to go in and amend it with the final return because the system um, uses that final return to know, like, hey, okay, we're closing, we're doing our checks, and then we're going to issue the clearance. But if the return's not marked as final, the system doesn't know to do all of that. Um,
We can't read your mind.
right. um,
Unfortunately.
we see, unpaid balances, whether it's on franchise and excise or other accounts. Like you said before, all balances have to be paid to close franchise and excise and to get that clearance letter that you're needing to close out with the Secretary of State. Um, we see if you file a tax return for other tax accounts, say, 2025 right now, people are filing sales and use tax accounts monthly for 2025. Um, that creates a filing liability for franchise and excise. So if you file a final 2024 return, but you're still filing sales and use 2025, we cannot accept the 2024 as the final return.
You're
We
obviously
have,
still in business if you're filing returns for
yes,
2025.
yes,
Yeah.
but we do see that. So we can create, of course, a short period for 2025 for you to
Okay.
file that final return. But that is the main things that we see when it comes to closing franchise and excise, the issues.
Lots to consider there, especially considering that all the other accounts have to be in good standing and
Mm-hmm.
kind of lots of T's to cross and I's to dot, right?
Yes.
Um, so I see there. Thank you for that, Megan.
You're
A
welcome.
question here from Seth. Can a business that was previously closed claim unused credits? So I think that's regarding if you've got credit on a tax account and you've already closed and it's there. Maybe you don't have access to TINTAP anymore. Yes, any credit that you've got, uh, you can claim for refund. If you no longer have a TINTAP account. TINTAP's the easiest way to do it, claiming credit for refund. We are actually planning on doing a webinar, don't have the date scheduled for it yet, but how to claim refund and penalty and interest and refunds, penalty waivers and refunds. We're going to do a webinar on that, but there's information on our website about that, how to submit a claim for refund. If you've got TINTAP, it's really easy. If not, there's a paper form for it. But yeah, you will not automatically receive a check in the mail if you've got credit on your account. You have to request that. It's an easy process, but you have to request it.
Yeah.
Um, let's see here. Uh, Lakita says, is there a step-by-step checklist that we can follow when closing an account? Honestly, that's what this webinar is. There's not a big master one because it's different per tax account type, what you need to do. Let me go back over to, let's see, what slide would that have been on? Hold on a second. This link right here, close a business. Actually, I'll take you over to it. It's another place where you can see everything, kind of a one-stop shop here. Can you also, Megan, can you see my browser?
I can.
Okay. So I'm on tn.gov/revenue, and that info page about closing a business is right here under How Do I? Obviously, this is a very common question. Close a business. Um, and there's a breakdown per tax type right here. Uh, I would say between using this webinar and the PDF of this webinar as a resource for a checklist and going to this page would probably be there's not a specific, checkbox checklist, but those are the two resources, Lakita, that I would refer you to. Again, each tax manual that is going to have more information. So let me go back to our homepage, tn.gov/revenue. Hold on, I'm going to make this a little bigger. From our homepage, if you go to tax resources and then tax guidance, and then click on tax manuals, you'll see we have tax manuals for every, we're just talking today about business tax, F&E tax, sales tax, and liquor by the drink, but we've got tax account manuals for other tax types. We've got tax account manuals for industry specific guidance. But the tax account manuals would be another place that I would refer you to just to make sure. And call us. I mean, you can always reach out to us if you're still confused about something. We would much rather you reach out to us if you're closing your business and you think anything may not be buttoned up just quite right, or if you just want to make sure you think you've done everything, you think you've closed out everything, but you're not sure. Better safe than sorry. We would love to help you with that and dive into your account with you and look and make sure everything's closed up right. All the returns have been filed. We can see that in just a matter of minutes on our end in our system to see if you've closed out everything correctly. Now, when it comes to closing out with other state agencies, we do not have access. Like I said, we share information, we share data with the county clerk's office, with the city recorder's office, with the Secretary of State, with the alcohol beverage, the ABC. We share information with them, but when it comes to closing out your accounts, I still recommend reaching out to other state agencies. We are kind of silos at this point in time still, where you want to we work independently of each other. If you've got a unemployment insurance tax through Department of Labor and Workforce, you'd need to reach out to them about that. If you have an occupational license, let's say you've got a physician's license, a license to be a physician or a nurse or a cosmetologist or a contractor, you'd have to reach out to those boards and Department of Commerce and Insurance about closing out your license. We're just talking about your state tax accounts here. Also, we're not talking about federal, closing it out with the IRS, with federal. Just Tennessee state tax accounts is all we're giving guidance on right now. I wouldn't even begin to want to give guidance on the about the others. So
So I see a question from Jared Brown. What is the best number to contact for resolution if a client gets a notice for F&E taxes after the return was marked final, but the client did not close the SOS account? So if it has been past the 45-day, because clearance letters are only valid for 45 days. If it's been past 45 days, you're going to call the F&E registration number. It is 615-253 0700. Registration is option 3. Now, if it has been within the 45 days and you still have that clearance letter, you're going to contact the Secretary of State office to make sure to terminate with them. And their phone number is 615-741-2286.
I'm putting those in the chat right now. I'm putting both those numbers that you just gave us. Okay, thank you. So let me make sure, because I was typing, just want to make sure I understand. If you go beyond that 45 days, you're
He's
going
going
to
to
need
need
to
a
do
new
this.
clearance. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go back to that slide. Where was that? Where we're talking about, I think slide 15. So what you're saying here is this step 4 here, to complete the whole process, you've got
Mhm.
to provide that letter within 45 days. If not, reach back out to
Yes.
us. You're going to need a new letter.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
good to know. Here's a question from Julie. Closure of a business on Etsy. Is there anything different about a brick and mortar business? Honestly, Julie, no. Tax account is a tax account. A location is a location, regardless of if it's an online business and it's based out of your home, or a brick and mortar location. We see the location as where you are based, whether it's home based or not. Some people have a problem with that and don't like using their home address. That it's the law that's where we have to use your location if you are an Etsy business, online based business. Um, all these steps, nothing changes about what we've just talked about if you're just online based or not. This is a question from Carrie. Closed a physical location but still sell to Tennessee, so have Nexus. Are there steps we may have missed in closing the physical location? So that's a really good question. I'm assuming, Julie, you're an out-of-state business, but just making that assumption based on the way you worded your question. But you still have Nexus here. If you no longer have a physical location here, so you used to and you no longer do, that does change things just a little bit, yes. With no physical location, nothing would change with your sales tax account other than if you closed out that location, that's fine. You'd still have a sales tax account as an out-of-state seller. You'd need to contact us about that. For business tax, you would no longer, as an out-of-state business, you no longer need that license, the business license from the local clerk's office, but you would still, if you're still liable for business tax, so that means gross sales of over 100 annually, over 100,000 annually into Tennessee, you would still need a business tax account, but that reach out to us about, you would close out your physical location and then we would set you up with an out-of-state location. Nothing changes at all with F&E. I think that's right, except for just making sure your address is up to date with us. So
I've seen several questions asking if there's a difference for closing out of state businesses. I'm going to answer it on a franchise and excise
sure.
standpoint. So, if you are not registered with the Secretary of State, then you would still file a final franchise and excise return, of course, but the system is not going to issue a clearance letter because you technically do not need one. Now, you still will receive a notice of account closure, um, but to get a clearance letter, you have to have an SOS control number on the account. If you're out of state and you're not registered with the Secretary of State, then the clearance letter wouldn't be issued. You would just get that closure. So you would still have to file a final return. Um, and then, you just wouldn't have to, of course, do anything with the Secretary of State.
Great, thank you. We are running short on time here, y'all. There's still lots of questions, so I wanted to put this screen up. We've provided a couple other ways to contact us throughout this webinar, but if you don't already follow us, lots of ways to follow us here to stay in touch with Department of Revenue. But I wanted to reiterate here our support email, revenue.support@tn.gov for any questions, or call us. The general tax line is 615-253-0600. And I think you said that F&E line was 253-0700. Is that right?
F&E registration,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 615-253-0700.
Okay.
And we are option 3 for
Option 3.
registration.
Right.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you. We are going to have to go ahead and end things because we actually have a fire drill coming right at the top of the hour. So I wanted to thank Megan again. Thank you so much for all your help with putting this together and all the information that you gave us today. That expertise is invaluable. Thanks, Dan, for
Thank you
Katie,
for
I
having
just
me.
posted a link to
okay.
the tax manuals that you were talking about. I had a couple questions that were
Okay.
asking just for the tax manuals. Also, there were zillions of questions that we weren't able to get to in the short amount of time. So please, please, please contact us. Send those emails or phone numbers to us, and we'll get to you.
For sure. Wanted real quick to let you know about some things we have upcoming here. We've got our webinar next month. It's one of my favorites of the year. It's our legislative updates. Everything that changed after this past legislative session. Jeff Foster from our legal team is going to fill us in about all of that next month. And then in August, we're going to be talking about manufacturing exemptions. In a couple weeks, we have a new business workshop coming up on July 9th. It's a 3-hour long webinar that is dedicated to small businesses. It's kind of the basics about getting set up with all the tax stuff. You can get to both our webinar, register for upcoming webinars and the new business workshop on our website, tn.gov/revenue, and clicking on taxpayer education and then either webinars or new business workshops. There's a link to it if you've got the PDF. And that's it. We thank you all so much for being with us today. Please take a minute and complete the survey as you exit the webinar. And if you do need CPE credit, again, just make sure you answer yes to that question and provide your name as it should be listed on the certificate. Thanks again so much. Thanks again, Megan, and we'll see you soon. Have a good one.